Hello everybody, welcome to the RPD Files, the ultimate deep dive into Resident Evil. I am your host Cassie, and today we are covering Resident Evil 0.
Resident Evil 0.
So, this game is set before all the other ones. Back in 1998, an Umbrella Pharmaceuticals train was ambushed by leeches, and everyone in that train was killed by said leeches. And in response, Raccoon City Police Department sent out members of the STARS team, which stands for Special Tactics and Rescue Service. The helicopter crashes into the area and the entire team is split up. One of our main characters, Rebecca Chambers, who is the medic of the STARS team, is looking for clues on the train when she is suddenly attacked by the dead passengers. But Rebecca gets saved by our other main character, Billy Cohen, who is a prisoner on the run for crimes he didn't commit, which we'll explain later. Then they both find themselves in an abandoned Umbrella training facility, which is where the T-virus, the progenitor virus which made the T-virus, was discovered by three scientists, Marcus, Spencer and Ashford. The virus was originally planned for good, but it was used to create BOWs, which stands for bioorganic weapons. The mysterious figure on the building at the beginning of the game, which is before when they send out the leeches, is Marcus, who is infected by the Queen Leech, and it made him younger. And Marcus was killed by orders from Spencer 10 years ago. But obviously the Queen Leeches took over his corpse and kept him alive and turned him into, a younger form of himself. And then obviously later on in the game, Rebecca and Billy Cohen defeat Marcus and the Queen Leech, and then they escape from, facility after William Birkin, who will explain in Resident Evil 2, which will be in a future episode, sets a self-destruct sequence in the facility, and Rebecca and Billy make it out before it explodes. And Rebecca leaves Billy to help find the rest of her team, which will be covered in Resident Evil 1. And we are now moving on to Resident Evil 1.
Resident Evil.
In the woods and get attacked by zombie dogs and have to take shelter inside the mansion. The rest of the team consists of Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Wesker and Barry Burton. One of them betrays the team, which we'll find out later. Wesker orders the team to split up and secure the mansion, and Chris runs into Rebecca from Resident Evil 0. They find out that the mansion was also an Umbrella training facility for the T-virus, which was made with the help of the progenitor virus. And Jill, who is still on the other side of the mansion, finds out that the scientists killed the architect who built the mansion and kidnapped his wife and daughter to be first T-virus subjects. Jill runs into the captain of the previous police crew, and he tells her that there's a traitor on their team, but it's short before revealed who the traitor is. Next, Jill then runs into Barry, who is being suspicious, and they get ambushed. And they get ambushed by a monster, and Barry betrays Jill by taking the only exit elevator out of where they are, and now Jill is stuck with the monster. And the monster is actually the architect's daughter, who has been subjected to the T-virus, but also has the G-virus inside of her as well. Jill finds Barry again, who tries to kill her again, and the whole team eventually run into each other again, and Wesker is working on a computer in a lab, and Wesker was the traitor all this time. Surprises. And he had kidnapped Barry's family to force him to do his work, and Wesker was also working for Umbrella, and to make sure no evidence of the mansion ever existed, but he was also betraying Umbrella to give info to a rival company. Rebecca activates the self-destruct sequence, but something escapes. So what escapes? We will find out in the next episode, which covers Resident Evil 2, with Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield, and they have their own stories, with only one of each of their stories being canon. So you have Leon A, Leon B, Claire B, and Claire A, which we will find out in the next episode. And with that, we have stepped into the safe room to save our progress for now. But the nightmare of this franchise is very far from over. We still got a lot more games to cover. Until then, hello everybody, welcome back to the RPD Files. My name is Cassie, and today we are covering Resident Evil 2.
Resident Evil 2.
Leon Kennedy was on his way to Raccoon City for his first day at the police station, but he ended up being late for reasons not stated in game. But as from finding out through instruction manuals of the old Resident Evil 2 game before the remake came out, because the old game came out back in what date? Resident Evil 2, the original, came out in 1998, and the remake was 2019. But for his story, he was late to his first day at the police station in Raccoon City because he locked himself up in a motel room or a hotel room and basically just dragged himself up into a hangover because his girlfriend broke up with him, which is revealed either from looking up online or instruction manuals of the old game. But anyways, he witnesses a cop being killed by a zombie in a local gas station in the remake. So we're going off what we've seen in the remake, not the original. Yeah, he witnesses a cop being killed in a gas station. When he's running away, he runs into Claire Redfield, who is Chris Redfield's sister. And Claire is also going to the police station to hopefully find information about where Chris has disappeared off to after the events of Resident Evil 1. They arrive in Raccoon City and they get separated by an explosion because of a fuel tanker driver who got bitten by a zombie in the remake, driving the truck while injured and basically turning into one of the infected. And once the explosion happens, Leon enters the RPD alone because since we have two different stories, we have Leon A and Leon B. In Leon story A, we actually meet Marvin before he turns into a zombie. But you know more about Marvin in Resident Evil 3. So we'll cover that in our next episode. Anyway, we meet Marvin, who is injured, and he turns into a zombie later on. Marvin also gives Leon a combat knife that, funnily enough, he keeps for all of his games. If obviously we go from if Leon's story A is canon, but most people think Leon B's story is canon, so he doesn't never meet Marvin before he got turned. But anyhow, Leon finds his way to the basement garage where there's a lot of zombies, like a lot of zombie dogs, and he gets saved by Ada Wong, who is an FBI agent. Turns out she's not an FBI agent. Well, that gets more explained later. And they both find an FBI informant who's locked in a jail cell in the prison area of the RPD, named Ben. But Ben is killed by a tyrant called Mr. X, who was also infected by the T-virus, also known as the Tyrant virus. And from the informant, Leon and Ada find out that there's a secret Umbrella lab down in the sewers of Raccoon City. And Ada also reveals that she needs to find a sample of the G virus, which Birkin from Resident Evil 0 and 1, well, of course 0, helped to make the G virus. And he also injected himself with the virus. His full name is William Birkin, but everyone calls him Birkin. Yeah, and Ada needs to get that sample from Annette Birkin, who is William Birkin's wife. Yeah, and Annette uses a stun gun to attack William Birkin, who is infected with the T virus. Not the T virus, the G virus, after he injects himself with it, because people from Umbrella tried to take it away from him because they thought it was dangerous to the rest of the world, which it is. One of the Umbrella members that a lot of people will probably recognise the name of is Hunk. And we know more about Hunk in later games, and also Operation Raccoon City, which is not really canon, it's just more of like a sideline game, so we're not covering Operation Raccoon City, we're just covering Resident Evil 0 up to the newest game. But anyway, we also found out that from Annette Birkin that Ada is not an FBI agent, she is actually a mercenary. Yeah, and Annette shoots Ada and she supposedly falls to her death. But she actually survived the fall, somehow, Resident Evil logic. We're also talking about the same franchise when in the 5th game Chris punches a bloody boulder. But anyway, Ada gives Leon a rocket launcher to defeat Mr. X, who has now been mutated and everything by the G virus. No, it's not Mr. X. It's like William Birkin will transform them and stuff. And Leon meets back up with Claire, who will explain her story in a minute. And Claire, who is also with Sherry Birkin, William Birkin and Annette Birkin's daughter, who did have the virus, but Claire cured her in her story, but more on that later. Yeah, and they both escape Raccoon City, and that is Leon's story. Now let's move on to Claire's story. Claire's story is pretty similar to Leon's, except instead of her walking into the gas station, she meets up with Leon outside of the gas station, hops into Leon's police car, and introduces herself as Claire Redfield. And she's looking for whereabouts on where Chris is, her brother, from Resident Evil 1. And along the way, she's obviously walking around the police station, going through the garage as well, basically the same as Leon. But except, she doesn't really get to the garage. She goes slightly underground the RPD, and she finds Sherry Birkin, as already stated, Annette and William Birkin's daughter. And Sherry gets kidnapped by a person who runs an orphanage nearby in Raccoon City. And we play as Sherry to escape the orphanage. And in Leon's story as well, we do play as Ada, but it's a very short segment. And we just have to get out of a furnace and whatnot, while Leon gets shot and he recovers. And we go back to Leon in that story. But anyway, back to Claire. But once Sherry escapes the orphanage and Claire meets back up with Sherry, Annette injects her with the G virus, as basically to make her a test subject. But that didn't exactly go to plan. But then Claire cured her, and Annette realised what the hell she had done, and then once Annette gets killed by William Birkin because she got absolutely clawed up to death pretty much, she gives Claire the cure to cure Sherry, and then Sherry and Claire meet up with Leon in her story, and Claire in her story, depending on which scenario you play, if you pick Claire scenario A, she defeats the G virus at its 5th stage, which is like, it's on the train that Claire, Sherry and Leon all escape on. It's all the way at the back. and it's just mutated into the train, a giant mouth full of sharp teeth and such. But in Leon A's story, you don't fight it in Leon A's story, you fight it in Leon B's story. But again, depending on which one you depend on which you think is canon, Leon A or Leon B, Claire A or Claire B. It depends on your choice and preference. A lot of people tend to think it is Leon B and Claire A as canon. But honestly, in my opinion, I prefer Leon A in terms of Leon B. But anyway, we have entered the safe room once again to save our progress for now. So then, I'll catch you all in the next episode where we cover Resident Evil 3, where we meet back up with Jill Valentine and a new protagonist, Carlos Oliveira, who works for Umbrella but he doesn't know what's going on. So I'll catch you all in the next episode. Goodbye. Hello everybody, welcome back to the RPD Files. I am your host Cassie, and today we are covering Resident Evil 3.
Resident Evil.
So sit back, relax, and let's delve back into the nightmare of Resident Evil. Now, Resident Evil 3. We go back to one of our characters from Resident Evil 1, Jill Valentine, who is still traumatized from the events of Resident Evil 1 and everything that she saw in the mansion. But suddenly Nemesis breaks into a house because he was summoned by Umbrella to take out any witnesses of the STARS team from Resident Evil 1. Also that being from some of our main characters if you watched the previous episode. Chris and Jill are our main ones. And obviously Wesker, but he was betraying the team so he doesn't really count. But more so Chris and Jill. But anyway, Nemesis is then supposedly killed by Umbrella's UBC agent member, Carlos Oliveira, who he believes he's in Raccoon City helping Umbrella saving civilians, which obviously is not the case. And Jill does not believe him for a second, because of the horrors that she's seen in the mansion, but obviously Carlos doesn't know about any of that. He just thinks he's working for Umbrella saving civilians from the outbreak of the viruses in Raccoon City. And he just really does not know what the hell is going on. But anyway, Nemesis is still alive actually, and looking for Jill. So he can take her out and take out other members of what's left of the STARS team from Resident Evil 1. But anyway, Jill tries to leave Raccoon City by taking a train, by helping other members of Umbrella's UBC team. But the train does not go to plan because of another character under Umbrella's UBC team called Nikolai. And Nikolai is Anyway, back with Carlos. He is now at the RPD in Raccoon City. And he finds an SOS call from another character called Dr. Bard, who is working on a cure for the virus inside a secret lab controlled by Umbrella, obviously, except for him ties back to Umbrella somehow. But anyway, Carlos then finds Jill, who got infected by Nemesis by Nemesis stabbing her in the arm in the remake of Resident Evil 3. And Jill is infected and dying, and then Carlos takes her to a nearby hospital in the remake to then go find a sample of the cure from Dr. Bard, who Carlos now finds dead. And then Carlos finds a recording from Dr. Bard on a nearby computer explaining everything that Umbrella has done, and Carlos was actually working for the bad guys instead of working for who he thought was the good guys. But anyway, and once Carlos actually finds out the truth, he gets the cure, takes it back to Jill, injects Jill with it, and then we switch back to Jill at Umbrella. Before we switch back to Jill, the hospital is then invaded by a whole lot of zombies because a broadcaster put that out on October 1st that Raccoon City will be bombed to take out all of the zombies and all the infection that is in Raccoon City. And the game takes place on September 29th, which is also the same date that Resident Evil 2 takes place, so they overlap slightly. But by the time that Jill is infected, Leon, Claire and Sherry have already left Raccoon City at this point. But anyway, back to Resident Evil 3 and Jill. Once Carlos defeats all of the zombies invading the hospital by using a bunch of C4 in the remake and just shooting them all to high hell, Jill then wakes back up. And she then looks around the hospital, finding a way underground to Umbrella's underground facility, and makes another sample of the cure so she can give it to people in control of bombing Raccoon City to hopefully stop them from bombing Raccoon City, which obviously does not happen. Because Jill finds the cure, or makes a new cure, but what really happens is that Nikolai finds the cure that Jill makes and takes it off her when she's hanging off from a ledge, and then Jill has to fight Nemesis again because Nemesis is still not dead. But we think Nemesis is now dead because since Carlos comes back and helps Jill by melting Nemesis into acid, but that does not work. It just mutates him more, surprisingly. And now Umbrella's lab is called Nest 2, and obviously the first nest was in Resident Evil 2, where Leon and Claire went, where Claire took Sherry and Leon looked around for ways to find the G sample, find the G virus sample for Ada. But anyway, Jill makes another cure, but then Nikolai takes it, and then by the time we meet back up with Nikolai again at a helicopter, where we find after Carlos runs after Nikolai, and we find Carlos on the floor. He's still alive, by the way. Carlos is still alive, but he's just knocked down on the floor. And then obviously Nikolai throws the cure next to Jill, and then Jill reaches out to grab it, and then Nikolai crushes it with his foot. Of course, like the cunt he is. Anyway. And then Jill obviously defeats, before meeting back up with Nikolai, Jill defeats Nemesis for the final time by using a railgun. And basically just blowing a hole through Nemesis and the entire facility, and then meets back up with Nikolai. Anyway, and then Jill takes down Nikolai, and then Jill and Carlos get on the helicopter, leaving Nikolai to die once Jill has shot him to get, while Carlos restrains him. Anyway, as Jill and Carlos get on the helicopter and start flying away, Raccoon City is bombed. Because they said hours until it was bombed on September 29th, and they moved it to October 1st. And then as Raccoon City gets bombed, Jill and Carlos are flying above the city, getting away from Raccoon City as the bomb goes off. And Raccoon City was bombed by the government to get rid of all the zombies and possible infection, which obviously was not the case as we come back years later in Requiem, which takes place nearly 30 years later after the events of Resident Evil 3, but we've still got a lot more games to cover. Other than hello kitty, hello Isabel, hello. She's came to help him. Anyhow, we've stepped into another safe room to save our progress up for... Hello, everybody, welcome back to the RPD Files. I'm your host as always, Cassie, and today we are covering Resident Evil 4.
Resident Evil 4.
Now sit back, relax, and let's delve back into the nightmare of Resident Evil. Now we are back with Leon Kennedy, who is now working for the government ever since the events of Resident Evil 2. And the President of the United States tasks Leon with going to Spain to rescue his daughter, named Ashley. And then once Leon gets to Spain, he is then ambushed by a group of crazy villagers in Spain who are infected with a new kind of virus called Las Plagas. Sorry. Anyway, and Ada has also came back from Resident Evil 2 Ada Wong, and she's been trying to collect a sample for this Las Plagas and another thing called the Amber sample, which we'll delve into in a minute. And Ada is also revealed to be on orders for Wesker, who is from Resident Evil 1 and who we'll meet back up with again in Resident Evil 5. Anyway, Leon then runs into ex-Umbrella researcher called Luis. And Luis was helping the lord of the village called Sattler. And Luis made the Amber sample, which gives people powers and mind control abilities who have the Las Plagas parasite inside of them. Anyway, Leon is then attacked by the chief of the village, along with Luis. And Leon is injected with the Las Plagas parasite, and Ashley is also infected, as we stated. And then Sattler wants to use Ashley to infect the president and then take over the world, like every major villain movie plot from the 2000s, because this game did come out in 2004 or 2005. Anyway, back to the plot. Ashley then gets kidnapped again, and Leon has to find her again. And Leon and Luis are attacked by a new character called Jack Krauser. Video watched for research how different spells of this dude's name. Anyway, Jack was also Leon's ex-mentor, and he now works for Sattler. And just before he dies, Luis gives Leon the keys to his underground lab, which hosts the cure for the parasite. And then Jack has killed Luis. And then Jack has now taken Ashley to a new island. So then Leon has to go find her again. And Jack wants to give Ashley to Sattler. And then with Ada Wong's help, Leon then catches up to Jack and Ashley. And Jack is then defeated by Leon in a military base. And Leon finds Ashley again, but is stopped by Sattler because they are both now infected with Las Plagas, and Sattler can control them. But Ada shoots Sattler, and then Leon grabs Ashley and takes them both to the lab to get killed. And that's where Leon's famous line of "feels like $1 million" first comes from. Anyway, and now Ada gets the Amber sample, and then by the time Ada gets the Amber sample and reports back to Wesker has already revealed to Ada that he already has the sample because he took it off Jack's dead body. And now he's going to use the Amber sample to make another virus, which will cover Resident Evil 5. And Wesker wants to take over the world, which he does not achieve as the events foreshadowing in Resident Evil 5, where we meet back up with Chris and another new character, which we'll cover in the next episode. And for now, that is where we will save our progress in another season for today. I'll see you guys in the next episode, and then we'll step into the nightmare of Resident Evil 5. Hello everybody, welcome back to the RPD Files. I am your host as always, Cassie, and today we are stepping back into the nightmare of Resident Evil, and we are covering Resident Evil 5.
Resident Evil 5.
So let's get into it. So let's sit back, relax, and step into the nightmare of Resident Evil once more. Anyway, 3 years after Jill's supposed death against Wesker, we're back again with Chris Redfield. Yay, Chris! Anyway, him and his new partner Shiva, or Sheva, however you want to bloody pronounce her name, go to Africa, well, West Africa, to arrest a bioweapon dealer named Irving or Irving, I think it's Irving. Anyway, but it was a trap set by Irving or Irving to get Chris and Shiva killed, but it fails. Obviously, because Chris is Chris. Anyway, and they both find a new form of the last Plagas virus from Resident Evil 4 that Leon found in the previous game. And Chris and Shiva also get into that Jill might still be alive, so yay, Jill's still alive. Great, Jill is still happy and well. Well, kind of. Wesker was doing experiments on Jill, that's why. From Resident Evil 3 up to 5, she's now blonde. And she's got a weird black bodysuit on and a weird little pink thing strapped to her chest. That's more in control of her. Anyhow, back to my notes. Chris and Shiva chase Irving into a tribal village, basically kind of similar to Resident Evil 4. And they find tents to a pharmaceutical company, not Umbrella this time, it's a different company, Tricell. And Tricell took Las Plagas, made it stronger before unleashing it into the region. Chris and Sheva confront Irving, but he injects himself with an unknown virus. Yay, unknown viruses, fun. And turns into a giant monster. As always, as it goes in Resident Evil. Chris and Shiva defeat him, as Chris does, it's because he's bloody Chris Redfield. And they get more info of stuff that is going on in the nearby cave. And Chris and Shiva learn that Tricell was an old Umbrella facility, which was experimenting with the old progenitor virus, which helped make the T-virus. And the T-virus helped make all of the other viruses in the Resident Evil universe. Anyway, now, with the help of the T-virus, there's now another new virus called Ouroboros, which was made by Wesker. And Wesker's entire plan with Ouroboros was to infect the whole world and kill people with inferior DNA. And Chris and Shiva confront Wesker, but they are stopped by Jill, who is being mind controlled by the weird pink thing on her chest, as we mentioned. And Chris and Shiva remove the device from Jill's chest, and then she's back. She's back to being her normal old self again, and she's gone. Anyway, next page in the notebook. And then Jill tells Chris that Wesker's only weakness is to inject himself with more of the progenitor virus, because he just keeps injecting himself with of these viruses, I assume. But that the progenitor virus is his only weakness. Yeah. Chris and Shiva then find Wesker boarding a bomber plane, which he plans to use to infect the whole world with. So, great Wesker, great. And Chris and Shiva then use Wesker's weakness against him to bring the plane down and into an active volcano. This is where the direction of the Resident Evil franchise, it was going like this, straight, they go into an opposite, like 180 degree direction of basically, we don't know what to do next. This is where RE6 comes along later, and it pretty much nearly killed the whole franchise. And that's next episode. But then Wesker punches a boulder. This is where boulder punching Chris meme comes from. Punches a boulder into an active volcano to save Shiva as she falls into said volcano, and they kill Wesker once he injects himself, turning him into like a big, monster with a weird looking big arm and such. And they made Wesker fall into lava, and that is Resident Evil 5. That is Resident Evil 5 done. We have stepped into another safe room for today. So I hope you all enjoy this, and I will see you in the next episode where we cover Resident Evil 6. A game that nearly killed off the entire Resident Evil franchise because it was just absolutely bloody wappy as all hell. Like, the plot just did not make sense to really anyone, and just it did not feel like Resident Evil because the direction went like this, just like and then Resident Evil 7 comes around and then we're back here again. But Resident Evil 7 is after Resident Evil 6. So I'll see you all in the next episode after we have hit save and conserved all of our ammo and checked all of our health items. Goodbye. Hello everybody, welcome back to the RPD Files. I'm your host as always, Cassie, and today we are now stepping back into the Resident Evil nightmare and covering Resident Evil 6.
Resident Evil 6.
The game that almost nearly killed off the entire bloody franchise. Where on earth do we start with this one? Because this one is just an absolute pile of mess. Anyway, let's get started. We're back with Leon Kennedy. Well, there's a lot of characters in this one. We have Leon Kennedy. Chris Redfield makes a comeback again. Yes, again. We'll be seeing a lot more of Chris after Resident Evil 5 and 6. Well, we've done number 5 in the last episode, but anyway, we've got Leon Kennedy, Chris, Sherry back from Resident Evil 2, but she's aged up and she's now an agent. Jake Wesker, Wesker's son. Now you're thinking, when did he have a kid? Who did he have a kid with? We have no idea, because we're just covering the games. It's probably explained in one of the CGI movies or the live action movies or the Netflix TV series, which don't bother with that, that's terrible. Anyway, and we also have Ada. Ada Wong comes back. And that is all the characters. But anyway, they all have different campaigns. But the main interesting, like the two main ones are Leon's and Chris's campaign. But they all basically follow the same sort of path. Just some things are slightly tweaked. Like how we have Claire's story and Leon's story in Resident Evil 2. And you have Leon A, Leon B, Claire A. Anyway, Leon Kennedy is now still working for the government, and he fails to protect the president because the president was about to reveal what actually happened in Raccoon City to the entire public. And then is killed in an act of bioterrorism. So yes, bioterrorism is a thing in Resident Evil. Anyway, and there's an outbreak in the city where this happens, but when it's not officially stated which city, I do not think so. I have not played Resident Evil 6, and I refuse not to. I refuse to play it, because I do not have the console for it. Anyway, and another agent named Helena Harper is introduced in this game, and then she's never seen again. Because that's how it works in Resident Evil. It's the same with Carlos Oliveira from Resident Evil 3. We see him in that game, he's not mentioned, he's not seen again for a while, but anyway. Helena Harper is an agent, and she brings Leon to a secret lab where the president's security advisor, Derek Simmons, not relation to Simmons, like, I can't remember his first name, but the lead singer of Kiss. Anyway, Derek Simmons, who is the president's security advisor, planned the attack and caused the outbreak. And we get another new virus, the C virus, which basically is like T virus mixed with G virus, I think. Well, it's G virus mixed with something else. I think it's G virus mixed with T Veronica. T Veronica virus is a virus that was introduced in the Code Veronica game, which is kind of canon, kind of not, I think. I'm not 100% sure, I've not played Code Veronica. Anyhow, but yeah, C virus. And which the C virus was evolved from the G virus, which I've stated. Anyway, back to Resident Evil 6 story. In this notes that book that took me nearly 3 pages to write on Resident Evil 6 because the story is a complete bloody mess. Helena only knew about the lab since Derek had kidnapped her and her sister to do experiments on them. Which is great, Derek, great. Screw you. Anyway, Derek used a girl called Clara, or Claire, I think her name's called Clara in the game, and she cloned her into Ada since Derek was in love with Ada, but Ada didn't love him back, and she just didn't want any of that, so the Ada clone then got her memories back as Clara, and she got so basically pissed off that she set revenge on Derek and the real Ada. Don't know why she set revenge on the real Ada. The real Ada didn't really do shit, but anyway. Then Clara started infecting the whole world with the C virus, starting with China. So we get to go to a new place in Resident Evil 6. We've been in Raccoon City. We've been to Africa. We went in Raccoon City, Spain with Leon and Resident Evil 4, Africa, and now we're in China. Anyway, now Leon and Helena go to China, and Chris is also there in China to hunt down the fake Ada, which is Clara. But Chris thinks that's the real Ada. And the real Ada is also in China, and Sherry is also back. Well, Ada has been trying to kill the fake Ada as well, but Sherry is also back, and she's now a federal agent, and is also in China with Wesker's son Jake, and Jake has the antibodies to make a cure for the C virus. Anyway, but Derek caught them all and caught Jake and Sherry and locked them up in a jail cell. And Jake is an also evil Jake. He's actually a pretty cool dude in Resident Evil 6. Anyway, and Jake wants to actually use his antibodies and use his blood to make a cure for the virus. And there's a battle between everyone, and then fake Ada also exposes Derek near the end of the game, or near the end of the campaign. I think it's either Chris's campaign or Leon's campaign. Either one of the two, that she exposes that Derek was part of a secret society called Family, which never gets spoken of about again either. Which is weird. But anyway, and Derek reveals that he killed the president of the USA, so the USA doesn't lose any global power due to what happened to Raccoon City. Seems pretty ironically how America is right now, ironically. Anyway, and the fake Ada shoots Derek with the C virus and turns him into a big monster looking thing. And then members of the family shoot the fake Ada, but she injects herself with the C virus as well, so turning her into a big monster too. Great! And then the real Ada then finds the fake Ada and kills her. And then Leon, Helena, and the real Ada team up to kill Derek. And Jake, and then Chris finds Sherry and Jake still in that jail cell in China. And he saves them both and finds a cure for the C virus, and then we meet back with Chris again in Resident Evil 7. But we don't play as him in Resident Evil 7, we have a new character in Resident Evil 7 and following into 8, which is going to be a double feature episode. Because it follows the same character, named Ethan Winters, who arguably after this game came out, saved the franchise back in 2017. And Ethan, he's a pretty cool guy. Anyway, we have stepped into the safe room for now, and we will next be covering Resident Evil 7 and 8 as a double feature, as it follows Ethan Winters. I will see you all in the next episode. Make sure you conserve all your ammo and your health herbs. And I will see you all in the next episode. Goodbye. Hello everybody, welcome back to the RBD Files. As always, I am your host Cassie, and today we are covering Resident Evil 7 and 8.
7.
And this time, we are following the story of Ethan Winters. And we also see Chris again. He's just basically appeared in 4 games back to back. Because you see him in 5, you see him in 6, you see him in 7, and you see him in 8. And he's also mentioned in Resident Evil Requiem/9, but we don't actually see him mentioned. But anyway, back to Resident Evil 7 and Ethan Winters. From 2000 to 2014, a secret organisation, we don't know the name of this organisation, experimented on a type of mold to create a new bioweapon called Evelyn. That can infect other people and mind control them to do whatever she wants to, but mainly killing, because that's the whole Resident Evil franchise for you. Anyway, Evelyn, or Evelyn, I think it's Evelyn, escapes containment when being transported on a ship by Mia Winters, who is Ethan Winters' girlfriend at this point. They're not married yet, that happens in Resident Evil 8. Anyway, Evelyn takes refuge in the Baker residence with the Baker family and infects the whole family and Mia as well. Then 3 years later, Evelyn lures Mia's husband, Ethan Winters, who we play as in Resident Evil 7 and 8, to the Baker family by sending a fake message from Mia, who is now missing. After going through the infected family, he does find Mia, but it's not really Mia, it's the mold controller her mind, and he basically kills the fake Mia or something like that. I haven't played Resident Evil 7 fully yet. That game is really scary. You bring back the horror of the franchise that Resident Evil 6 was missing. That's why a lot of people say Resident Evil 7 and Ethan Winters basically saved the franchise back when it came out in 2017. I think it's 2017. It was 2019 that the game came out. But I'm pretty sure it was 2017 because it came out 9 years ago. So yes, actually 2017 will be turning 10 years old next year. Wow, Jesus, that makes me quite old. After going through all the infected family, which includes Jack, who is the dad, Lucas, who is the son, and Maurice, who is the mom, and there is the aunt as well, but I don't think she's just a sleeper install again, she doesn't really go after you or anything. And it's mainly Jack and Maurice who go after you. Also Jack, he's a stubborn dude and he just won't die. But anyway, after going through the infected family, Ethan then rescues Mia, and he also gets rescued by Chris. Yeah, so Chris comes back, yay! And he rescues Ethan during the final face-off against Evelyn, and Chris takes Ethan and Mia to Europe to hopefully start a new life over in Europe after the events of Resident Evil 7 and everything else that's gone down. Anyway, and also Chris does the work for the BSAA, which stands for Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance. He now instead commands a new bioweapon hunting organisation called Blue Umbrella. And like I already stated, we see Chris again in Resident Evil Village/8. Anyway, let's move on to Resident Evil 8. Arguably one of my new favourites in this franchise. I've only actually played properly all of Resident Evil 2, all of Resident Evil 3 Remake, both the remakes, and Resident Evil Village, and I've started 7 but I haven't finished it. But anyway, Resident Evil 8. Go into the notebook. Chris goes back to Ethan and kills Mia, and takes his daughter, Rose. Yeah, Ethan now has a kid called Rose, who's only a baby. And Chris also takes Ethan with him, but the car that Chris shows up in gets attacked. And Ethan then ends up in a mold-infested village and begins to look for Rose. And then Chris didn't shoot Mia, but a shapeshifter called Mother Miranda. Well, her name's just Miranda, but everyone calls her Mother Miranda. But she runs the village along amongst all the four lords of the village, who we'll cover in a second. And yeah, Mother Miranda was pretending to be Mia to take Rose away from Ethan, because she wanted to use Rose to basically use Rose as a vessel to make her do something to do with her unborn child to be resurrected again or something like that. But we'll cover that in a minute. Anyway, and the mold from Resident Evil 7 has came to the village, and like I just said before, this has been going on for over 100 years, with Miranda experimenting with the mold to create a vessel where a dead child could be reborn into, and Rose seemed to be the perfect fit. And as Ethan came face to face with the four lords of the village, who are Lady Dimitrescu, Donna Benevento, I don't know how you say her name, but the one with the doll the doll called Angie. The doll Angie's kind of creepy, kind of looks like something out of Corpse Bride in a way. But anyway, Lady Dimitrescu, Angie, then Donna Benevento, the doll person, Murrow, I don't know how you say his name either, he's like a weird creature looking dude, and Heisenberg. Well, Carl Heisenberg is his full name, but everyone calls him Heisenberg, and Heisenberg is the youngest out of everyone. Lady Dimitrescu is a vampire, Donna makes dolls, and obviously the doll called Angie, and yeah. And Ethan then finds out how to save Rose from finding a flask after killing Lady Dimitrescu. And he speaks to our lovely friend in Resident Evil 8 / Village, the Duke, who basically is our merchant. If you play Resident Evil 4, he is our merchant. But yeah, and he says, why don't you take a closer look? And then Ethan rubs all the dirt off the flask, and it says Rosemary, because his daughter's full name is Rosemary, but everyone calls it Rose, and it says head. So that means he's got to find all of her body parts, and I think if it goes with Lady Dimitrescu, you find Rose's head. With Donna and Angie, you find her legs. Then with Morale, you find her body, I think. And Carl with Heisenberg, you find the last piece, which is something else, but I can't remember. I haven't played Village fully yet. I'm like halfway through the game. I've only killed off Dimitrescu and Angie so far. But anyway, once Ethan finds all the flasks and put them in this little weird puzzle contraption looking thing in Village, he confronts Mother Miranda, and she tells him that this entire time, ever since the Baker family, Ethan's body has actually been infected with the mold. So great! Thanks, Mother Miranda, for ruining the whole story. Well, not ruining the whole story, but ruining the whole vibes. Anyway, and Chris then finds the real Mia and saves her, and then Ethan stays back to finish off Mother Miranda, and is sadly killed from the mold, basically killing him and decaying his body. And now and at the end of the game it says the father's story is now done, which is really sad. Really, really sad. Ethan basically saved the franchise back when Resident Evil 7 came out. But anyway, and also during the game, kind of spoilers if you haven't played Village, but Ethan does lose his hand. He pulls on a switch, pew, hand cut off. And then he just goes, health stuff. It looks like water, but health stuff. Grabs his hand, pew, back on. Perfect, it works like new. And he also loses 2 of his fingers after being sliced. And he also gets shot in the leg with an arrow and just pulls it out like it's nothing. Go Ethan Winters, the badass. But anyway, that is Resident Evil 7 and 8 covered, and we have now stepped into one of our last save rooms, because we only have Requiem to go, which is the newest game in the franchise, and it covers a character that we have seen come back, Leon Kennedy. We're back with Leon Kennedy once more, and a new character who I will introduce in the next episode. But anyway, that is all from me, and I will see you all in the next episode. Goodbye. Hello everybody, welcome to the final episode of the RPD Files. As always, I am your host Cassie, and today we are covering the final game in the canon timeline of the mainline Resident Evil games,
Resident Evil Requiem.
Anyway, we are back with Leon Kennedy, and it's set pretty much 28 to 30 years after the events of Resident Evil 3, after Raccoon City has been bombed. And we are introduced to a new character who is an FBI analyst called Grace Ashcroft. And she gets kidnapped by someone called Victor Gideon, or Gideon, I think it's Gideon, who was a former Umbrella scientist. And Leon is now back in Raccoon City because he gets sent there since he's still working for the government. And he says Leon Kennedy, his name to Grace Ashcroft, his name is Leon Kennedy and he's DSO, which is probably something in the government, but I don't know. But Leon also now has the T-virus, or as we later find out, Raccoon City Syndrome, which is basically where all survivors of Raccoon City have they had the T-virus all along, but it just slowly built up in their body so they didn't immediately turn into the zombies or anything. And that's why Leon now needs the cure. And it does look similar to the mold from Resident Evil 7 and 8. Because if you've watched the trailers for Requiem/9, you see Leon take off a glove, and his hand is with black stuff on it. But yeah, that's what it seems to be. And we also see Sherry Maker come back again, and she's now helping out Leon and working for the government as well, actually, still being a federal agent. But anyway, Victor has also created failed clones of Grace. And Grace is somehow the key for Spencer, one of the co-founders of Umbrella, Spencer's last creation, which is Elpis, which Elpis turns out to be a cure for the T-virus. Anyway, and one of those failed clones, I think I haven't played Requiem because I do not have 60 quid in the bank. I got money, but I'm not paying 60 quid on a Resident Evil game right now, since it's not marketed. But anyway, I think one of those failed clones is Emily, who we don't play as though really well we do, but there's a little small segment with Emily. She's kind of like Grace, so I think she is a failed Grace clone, but I'm not sure. Yeah, we mainly carry her around as Grace before she turns into a big monster, and then Leon has to shoot her. But it is confirmed that she is still alive, which is good because. In the good ending, again, because there's two endings. There's a bad ending and there's a good ending, which the good ending is what we want. But anyway, in the good ending, Leon says to Grace that they didn't hit any of her vital spots, so that means she could still be alive, which is good. Anyway, and an Umbrella facility is also still intact, which I think we do go visit Requiem. Again, I'm not sure I haven't got the game just yet. And we also learned that Elpis is actually a cure for the T-virus, so that's why I said there's a good ending and a bad ending. It depends on who you want to listen to the final segment. And if you listen to Grace, you release Elpis, but if you listen to Leon, you destroy Elpis. Anyway, Grace injects Leon with Elpis if you listen to Grace and release Elpis. So I don't really know how you say it. Elpis, I think it's Elpis. Anyway, Leon, Grace injects Leon with Elpis. Elpis, I don't know. I don't know really how you say it anymore. And then Leon defeats Victor after being killed because Victor's turned into a big bloody monster. So exactly what normal has to go with him. And the game is also called Requiem because it's named after a gun. Named after Requiem, which is the gun that Leon carries, and he does get the Grace with one bullet in it, which is a bit weird, but it's Leon Kennedy we're on about. He's attractive, but anyway. And the bad ending, I'll now explain the endings. The good ending. The good endings is if you listen to Grace, and you release Elpis, and inject Leon with it, and then he defeats Victor, and yeah, and then so on and so forth. And then members of Chris's crew say Leon Kennedy, and then he says depends who's asking, and like the members says, I have a message for you from Captain Redfield. So he's mentioned again, but we don't see him. But anyway, now the bad ending. The bad ending is if you choose to listen to Leon, and you actually destroy Elvis, and then Leon gets killed by a new character called Zeno, and he's just basically a clone of Wesker, sort of. He's not really that important. He's just basically Wesker if you wore a white suit. But anyway, that is the story of Resident Evil Requiem /9, and I am excited for what the franchise brings in store for the franchise next, like what's going to happen in RE10. But I think currently at the moment Capcom is very much focused on doing remakes for the older games such as Code Veronica, Resident Evil Zero, another remake of one did have a remake back in 2002, but it's like stuck on like the GameCube and such, PS2 and stuff, so it's stuck on there. But anyway, and also Resident Evil 5 remakes apparently in development, same with Resident Evil 6 remakes in development. But yeah, we might see Resident Evil 10 for a while. Probably most likely a lot of fans say probably not until maybe 2028 or maybe 2030. But that is it for this podcast. If you have enjoyed stepping into the Nightmare Resident Evil with me, but this time we are stepping into the safe room for one last time to say goodbye.